Welcome to the Friday Happy Hour with Victory Strategist, award-winning author and your happy hour host, Annmarie Kelly. Each week, Annmarie chats with women who have reinvented, started over or wrote fabulous next chapters. They share how they overcame their midlife challenges and how you can too. So kick back with some good happy hour something to drink and enjoy today's show.
You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour with me, Annmarie Kelly. I'm that recovering good girl and your victorious woman empowerment partner. This is the place for us victory chicks and you men who care about us meet on Fridays to wrap up the work week and find ways to live more powerfully and make our lives sparkle. Say, did you ever go on a retreat or any kind of like a spiritual revival weekend? Like maybe you went to one at Malvern or Temenos down the road? I used to go to one at a retreat house in Elkins Park, Pennsylvania. Well, if you ever did something like that, you know that they can do anything from simply refresh your spirit to totally changing your life. Today's guest, Melissa Heisler, went on one, but I have to tell you, she really went hardcore. She did her retreat in Peru with a couple of shamans. It was something. Now, until then, Melissa was a typical Type A personality. And along with the craziness that goes with being a Type A, and I know you victory chicks are Type A's. Not all of you, but a lot of you. And some of you guys, too. She had all kinds of health problems with being a Type A. You know, she had high blood pressure, all that stuff that goes with Type A. So after her trip to Peru, when she came back to the U.S., her life shifted in a big way. So Melissa's going to tell you about the trip and her life reinvention, and she'll be here shortly. Now, I hope you had a good week. I spent last weekend down the shore. Now, someone gifted Joseph and I their beautiful bayfront house in Stone Harbor for our anniversary. It was great. I mean, it was like right on the bay. It was just gorgeous. But I came home with a wicked cold. I spent Sunday night drinking NyQuil in emergency. And on Monday, when I tried to pull myself together for work, I didn't do such a good job. I got there around 12:30 and lasted for all of about an hour. Good thing I knew the boss, huh? I couldn't seem to hold two thoughts together, however, and well enough to form an intelligent sentence. And you know how that is, right? It doesn't make you feel good, and it's never good at work. Even when it's my business, you've got to stay off the phone. You just don't get anything accomplished. And don't you think it's really early in the season for a cold? That doesn't usually happen to you for me, that usually happens in January. Isn't that like how it happens for you, like after all the holiday eating and you catch up on, like all the stress catches up with you? It does. That's what it does to me. And I think it's my body's way of making me stop and rest. Of course, that's probably a little Type A, and I'm sure our guest today, Melissa, will have something to say about that. But it's only September. Who gets a cold in September? Well, maybe it's my body's way of telling me to go back to Maine. But instead, I wasn't in the state of Maine, but in the town of Wayne, Pennsylvania. And my body was telling me to go back to Westchester. So I did. I left home at noon, and by 3 o'clock, I was back home in my robe, drinking NyQuil in emergency, watching mindless TV and sleeping. Like I fall asleep, and mindless TV can put you to sleep. I was better enough by Tuesday to go to work from home, but I lost my voice. So it was quite a day and quite an uphill week. My voice started coming back yesterday, so if you hear something funky, that's what's going on. And while I was lying low, I read something interesting. I saw it online and was attracted by this title. Female politicians are inspiring confidence in working women. Now, I watched Monday night's debate, and I was not inspired by Hillary Clinton. But in all fairness, I wasn't inspired by Donald Trump either. But I wondered, based on the title, how are female politicians inspiring working women? So I was intrigued enough to read the article. Actually, it was a study done by an online accounting company in the UK, and it cited Britain's Prime Minister Theresa May and Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel. However, I think what they talked about was universal to you and me and every woman in all the Western countries, especially for us women in midlife. Well, here's what they learned through the study they did. About 20% of women surveyed said they were inspired by women politicians to speak up, be more confident and speak up so they could get a seat at the table. 10% of women are more willing to negotiate a salary or use their negotiating skills for business deals. Now, I'll bet a lot of you guys out there could be laughing at those percentages. 10 and 20% are still low numbers. But I'll bet you victory chicks aren't so surprised, because we know. The study also says something that I didn't think they needed to do a study to learn. It says that women are more inspired and confident about starting their own businesses. Now, I think that's true, but I don't think that's about seeing female politicians succeed. Based on my experience with hundreds of women, I think that's more about women being tired of working hard and still not getting a seat at the table and still not getting paid what they deserve. Instead, they're going out, starting their own businesses and banking on themselves. Now, in all fairness to the system, I think it's 100% better than it used to be. But better really still isn't good. Not when the percentage of women in executive positions in corporations is still under 20%, and the number of women on boards of directors is still less than 10%. But something else in the study that made me laugh. It said that there is, I'm quoting, still a gender gap for how seriously women are taken in the workplace. You think? Now, if you aren't being taken seriously as your male counterpart, you surely aren't getting paid what he is either. And I'm not talking about the women who don't step up to positions of more power and authority because they're having kids. You know, there's an argument to be made for that. That woman has been making a choice, hopefully temporarily, if she wants it to be temporary, because she needs to leave early and maybe take off days for sick kids. You know, that woman's in a different position. It's different anyway from, say, a single woman, or those of us in midlife who can finally focus on ramping up our careers. But get this. Last week, I ran into a friend of mine at Costco. She's a statistician with a master's degree and a bunch of letters after her name. She's truly a bean counter kind of woman, which, since I'm so not, sometimes makes me crazy. But sometimes I love that she sees things so differently. It's like it's a whole new thing for me sometimes, the way she sees things. So she has a statistician-style job in a bank lending institution. Earlier this year, she did a big deal study for her company. And in the months since the study was completed, the accuracy of it has outpaced the accuracy of all the previous studies done by people in the government, different companies, every place. As a result, her company wants to present her report, her study, to a group of bigwigs. All that's good for her, or so you'd think. Except for this. Her bosses are having her male coworker make the presentation. Yes, the presentation of her details, her findings, and her conclusions. She'll be there to answer questions, but she isn't making the opening presentation. Now, if that was you, wouldn't that burn your buns? It certainly burns mine. And she was furious. Now, naturally, she challenged the decision. They told her she wasn't, I can't recall the exact word that she said she used, but basically, she wasn't flashy enough. And you know what? Not that I want to defend her sod of a boss, but I sort of can understand it. It's what I and many women have said for years and years. And now listen, you guys, don't get ticked off when I say this, but my victory chicks know it's true. a guy does a little something and makes it sound like a really big deal. A woman does a really big deal and makes it sound like it's a little something. Come on, you guys, you know it's true. You make the bed and you do the dishes and you want some applause. Your spouse cooks dinner every night after getting home from work and doesn't think twice about it. And it's what she does. Everybody expects, no big deal. She doesn't even get a thank you sometimes, not even just thinking about applause. And I know you guys like the corporations are getting better too. So it's not like the guys from like 30 years ago. But here's the thing. I think we victory chicks get the concept of presentation is everything when it comes to love-related things like giving gifts, but not in how we tout ourselves. I have a guest coming to Happy Hour, I think it's in October or November, who just wrote a book it's called Women's Dirty Words. And she's talking about words that, like just and little. You know how you make that special dinner, get a gift, and bake a cake for your sweetie's birthday, and then say, I just made you a little something like it was nothing. It took you all day, but you make it seem like it's nothing. As Oprah herself once said, we play ourselves small, even when we're type A's. We victory chicks can do better. And we need to do better so we can serve our goals and our victories more effectively and efficiently. So in case you want to read that article, I posted a link to it on today's radio wrap-up at Victorious Woman. I also posted links to 3 other articles, about 2 about using weak language and 1 about how women see the workplace differently. So Melissa Heisler's here, and I invited Melissa to join us at Happy Hour because I think there's a little type A in so many of us victory chicks. And you guys too. Now, I'll be honest, I'm 100% sure I wouldn't want to do what she did in Peru. And when you hear about it, I'll bet you wouldn't either. But what she did, with what she learned there, is something we can all use. So listen, go get yourself some good Happy Hour, something to drink, and when we get back, Melissa will be joining us. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour.
When you wished you had more time for yourself, and now you have it, but you notice you're keeping busy with stuff, but that stuff isn't making you feel happy or filled up? And when you think about what would make you happy and filled up, you get stuck or feel overwhelmed. And then you go back to what's more familiar, more comfortable, even if it's not making you happy. Wouldn't you love to find a way to start making sense of that deep discontent you're feeling? Well, you're not alone. I'm Annmarie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. And I know there's a place for you, one that other women have found to be both inspirational and empowering, and it's the Victorious Woman Project. Go there now and get on my mailing list, where you'll be the first to know about my upcoming online workshops, teleseminars, and more. And while you're there, take a couple minutes to look over my blog. You can download some of the free stuff I have for you and let it get your creative juices going. I'm looking forward to meeting you at the Victorious Woman Project. And that's at www.victoriouswoman.com.
Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm your host, Annmarie Kelly, and welcome to you, Melissa Heisler. Glad you joined us for Happy Hour today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. What a great way to spend a Friday.
Thanks. That's great. Listen, Melissa, your book is called From Type A to Type Me. From Type A to Type Me. But I especially like the subtitle, How to Stop Doing Life and Start Living It. Do you think a lot of people are just going through the motions, like doing our lives instead of living it?
Absolutely. I think it's probably a lot to do with Americans and how we're so focused on work and that almighty dollar. That we're so focused on achieving and succeeding and receiving the money that there's very little focus when we're growing up on what we want and what would make us happy. You know, there's the words like slacker and, relaxation and happiness are only seen as a luxury or something we get for retirement. So many of us feel guilty if we're not being productive, if we're not constantly doing.
Mm-hmm. And I'll agree with you, but one of the things I might disagree with, this, I don't know even if this is a disagreement, but I think with a lot of women, I think everything you're saying is correct, except I'm not 100% positive that it's to get that almighty dollar. A lot of women, I think, do it for approval.
Yes,
I don't know if approval is exactly the word, but we want to not succeed. It's not that we want to succeed so much. We want, we want everybody to love us.
It's everybody love us, and that we feel less than. If we are not that superwoman who is taking care of the kids and taking care of our parents and taking care of the neighbor and doing a 40-hour a week job, then we are less than, and we're not good enough. And it's what you were talking about at the top of the show about minimizing our contributions. That, we keep ourselves small. We don't see what we do as being amazing. And so then we have to do more and more and more to prove to ourselves that we're worth even the meager crumbs that we allow ourselves to have.
And Melissa, one time I was speaking in Asheville, North Carolina, and for several years I was down there about once a year, and I was doing a new program, and I think I had just gotten in my head, and I just couldn't get it right, and I was, and you've probably had this experience where you just can't move it forward, and I just got all bunched up in my head. And I ended up talking to a coach, a friend of mine who's a coach, and I was talking to her, and she said exactly what you're saying. She said, don't you realize how many women need to hear what you have to say? And whatever she said, like it flipped a switch in my head. And I don't think we give ourselves that kind of credit.
It's perfectionism, and I think many women have it. A lot of type A's have it, and it's part of that all or nothing thinking that we need to have the exact right content and the exact right performance and communication skills, and everything needs to be absolutely 110% perfect, or it's absolutely trash. That there's nothing in between. And
what she did for me that day, this one, I'm so sorry that we weren't on a recording, because I would love to have played that back, like once a day. But what she did was that she made me focus, because I think what I was doing was I was focusing on me, and would the people like what I had to say? Would they like me? I was focusing on all that, and in the conversation I had with her, she made me forget that and focus on the people I was serving. And boy, that makes such a difference.
Yeah, and so I agree with that. Get rid of the focus on approval, which is where you were at. And I would take it one step further, not just focusing on those people you were meant to serve, but to turn it one step further and focus on you and your gift that you're meant to share. So it's not just focusing on who you need to share that gift with, but really you sharing your type me essence, that this is what you have to bring to the world, and it's your light that you're going to shine, and it's your way to be 110% you.
That's a really good point, and it's funny because when I was first starting out, I would say to my spouse, because he would get up and he'd talk, and if he made mistakes, it didn't matter, and people loved him. And I said, what do you think about before you go out and speak? And he said, I get really excited. I said, and I would get nervous, and he'd say, so what do you get excited about? I have this great information, and I'm going to be able to share it with people, which is exactly what you're saying, focusing on that gift that you have to give to people instead of, will they like me?
Exactly, and I think it's also, as women, I think we're focused on our flaws. That we're, if you look at the beauty industry, that's a whole other problem. But, we're so absorbed with how we're judged by others that we don't really accept ourselves for who we are. And if you think of how you are with your friends, if your friend has some spinach hanging out of their teeth at lunch, you let them know when you move on. But if you're that woman with spinach in your teeth, you miss the rest of the conversation because you're so terrified about that people think less of you because of that.
Oh my God, I wonder how long I had spinach in my teeth. Oh my God, who did I talk to like that?
Absolutely. And it gets even bigger than that, you're judging yourself by outward appearances and the foibles and things like that, but it is our uniqueness that actually makes us who we are. You know, I wrote a blog about this recently. I had to have my tooth fixed because I chipped it again. And I was so self-conscious because I had all these meetings and a chipped tooth I had to go to because I couldn't get it fixed yet. And when I showed up and just said, yeah, I chipped my tooth, it's being fixed tomorrow, everybody moved past it, and I could move past it. And what was actually interesting is when I got it fixed, they fixed it with my incorrect tooth. So instead of giving me a perfect tooth, they're like, oh, it's normally kind of crooked in this area. We're going to continue doing that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in your type A life, what did that look like in your life?
It was pretty horrible, I have to tell you. I was extreme type A, so I was always rushed, always busy, always hectic, always focused on the projects and the to-dos and not on the people around me or taking care of myself. I was overwhelmed, unhappy, I was ill. I was always
you had a lot of health problems. You had a lot of health problems.
Yes, I did. I had, and I don't want to go into too much detail here because it's not a lot of fun, but I had stomach issues, extreme stomach issues. I had issues with my feminine cycle where it was very, very extreme and very painful, and also had a very low immune system, I think, because I was battling this stress, the stress of being the type A that I was for so many years.
Yeah, I think people don't always know that when you're stressed, you're that fight or flight thing. You go into that, and stress really shuts down your immune system and leaves you open for all kinds of things.
It shuts down the three systems that I mentioned. It shuts down your immune system, so you're more apt to get colds. It shuts down your reproductive cycle because when we trigger the stress, we're making the body think it needs to fight or flee. So we don't need reproduction at that point, and we don't need digestion at that point. And what happened with me is I would get into that stressed mode, and I'd never get out of it. So it was hours and days and weeks and years of being in that stress mode with those systems shut down.
And you tried allopathic medicine, you tried homeopathic medicine, and you took a spiritual route. And then you took a trip to Peru. What was that all about?
Well, like you said, I went the mainstream route and saw every specialist I could think of and every pill that they could think of, and nothing seemed to help me. And I finally had an OB tell me, well, let's give you a hysterectomy at age 30 because maybe that will help. And then that's where it kind of sent me into, okay, let's try some acupuncture, let's try, nutrition, let's try anything else I can do. I even did some hypnotherapy for stress. And I would get a little bit of results, but nothing that really impact. And there was one day I was getting a massage for my tight muscles in my back, and the massage therapist was a good baby boomer, and the hippie baby boomer, I guess I should say. And she was telling me about her trips to Peru, and it was really always interesting to hear her stories. And this one day she told me the story about how the shaman she would go see, that he recently cured a man of cancer. And when I heard that, I'm like, I need to go. I was at such a desperation point that I was willing to try anything to see if I could get relief.
When I read your accounting of it, at the very beginning, I was laughing because you were so diligent. You followed all the instructions. You kept the journal. You did all that stuff. But you went through some really heavy-duty stuff. And you know what, Melissa, we need to go for a break. But when we come back, would you mind sharing some of that with my audience?
Absolutely.
That's great. Okay, so everybody just kind of hang tight there. Wait till you hear some of the stuff that Melissa went through in Peru. And then she's going to talk to you about moving from being a type A to a type Me. So we'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour.
Hi, this is Annmarie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. I trust you're enjoying my conversation with this fabulous, victorious woman. If you're getting inspired with ideas and feeling empowered, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's more for you. Tips, downloads, resources at the Victorious Woman Project. Go to victoriouswoman.com and look around and get on my mailing list so you can be the first to know about the newest good things I have for you. That's www.victoriouswoman.com.
Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Annmarie Kelly, and we're here with Melissa Heisler talking about her book, From Type A to Type Me, How to Stop Doing Life and Start Living It. So, Melissa, when you went through some heavy stuff, starting with that cleansing experience. So there were stages, like you did the cleansing, and then you did a couple other things. But that cleansing experience, tell my listeners, because, I have to be honest with you, when I read what you wrote, I think that I probably would have packed my bags and gone home, even before I did it.
I hear that, and in a way, I'm surprised that I didn't. But I also tend to be a bit stubborn, and I was at that desperation point. I truly was, and so it was the cleansing that you're talking about was a social cleansing where you went to a live spring. And it was just a nice little patio. Everybody was hanging out, and you take drinks of a mineral water that was coming right out of the ground, and you would drink until you had to defecate, and then you would go into one of the stalls that was there, and there were
that wasn't even like the porta potties that you see like when you go to events. Wasn't even that nice.
No, not at all. It was I think it was open air. So I think there was nothing on top of it, if my memory serves me. So you've got 3 walls and a door, and there was no toilet in there. There was just metal feet that you put your feet on, and then let her rip.
Yeah, I would have had to go home. Well, and then it was also that this was like a public. This was like a public spring, and it was an odd color, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was kind of a yellowish, bubbly color.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done that.
A lot of people I was with were not really interested in drinking it. But it was in for an inch, in for a mile, so I was going for it.
Well, that was so type A of you.
Absolutely. This is what I signed up for. I've got to click this box, and how many do I need to drink, and what do I need to do?
Yeah. And then there were other things. The thing that fascinated me in one of the exercises, and they gave you it wasn't peyote, it was some other kind of something that you ate, right?
Correct. We actually worked with 2 hallucinogenics that are similar to peyote. One is called San Pedro, and the other one is called ayahuasca. And they both come from cactus in the area.
And then at one point, they told you to start walking backwards, and I didn't quite understand this. So if you could explain that the more you walked backwards, then that meant that was how far you walked backwards, how far back the
trauma was?
Yeah.
Yeah. That is my assumption from what I could see happening to other people. So what they had us do is when it was our turn, we would stand in front of the shaman, and it was really dark, so I don't know how he really saw anything, but with the ayahuasca, your senses were really heightened. And he asked me to walk backwards, and I heard both him and his assistant kind of gasp. So they must have seen something. And so somehow in the movement, I don't know, and now thinking about it, and with more information that I have than I did on that trip, which is, goodness, about 8 years ago or more, it may have been that he was reading my aura. So maybe it was somehow the aura trail that he was able to see in my movement. I really don't know.
So, but you stuck it out. You did. It was like was it 8 days? Am I remembering that correctly?
10 days, including going to Machu Picchu, yes.
And, yeah, because you stayed a little bit extra than some people left, and you stayed a couple of extra days to go to Machu Picchu.
Yes.
And then you came back. And something that made me laugh also was when you got back that night, your spouse had tickets to a concert or something with a bunch of other people.
Yes, yeah, it was, he really wanted to go, and I knew that I wasn't really up for it, but I hadn't seen him in 10 days, and I just had this otherworldly experience. So
yeah, you're all mellowed out, you're all like in another world, and he went to go to a concert.
Exactly. And it was a concert. There's a place in Illinois where there's a restaurant in the middle of a lake. And so you were also, I was trapped there. Once I got there, there was really no way to get away. And so I'm there with hundreds of people and loud music and, party revelers on a Saturday night. And I had just arrived that morning. And it was probably one of the most surreal experiences I've ever had.
Yeah, because you say you saw, like, everything you saw. Once you came back from Peru, everything you saw in a different light.
I did. My awareness really improved in going to Peru. And I can't, I don't think there's one thing I can point to that made that happen. But I just saw everything in a new light. And everything we did, every way that I think, how I act, how I react, how I experience others and what their choices are, it was just a complete mindset shift for me.
How did your spouse deal with that? How did your friends deal with that? Because I'm sure you've heard it from your clients, and I hear from women that, what if I do this? Like, how will this affect my marriage? How will this affect my friends? And it's what we were talking about a little while ago, that whole approval thing. How did that work in your marriage and with your friends?
Well, with my husband is a very accepting guy. He lets me go.
Very nicely of him in the book.
and he deserves it too. He's a very sweet man. But he's not into self-improvement. He's not into shaman. He's not into half the things that I do. But he allows me to be me. And so, we have an agreement where I don't force anything on him, as it should be. And what's amazing, though, and I think a lot of people who go through self-discovery, is when I shifted the way I was and how I acted and what I was doing, it gave space to my husband and others around me to shift to a more comfortable place. I mean, I was not a wonderful person to be with.
Yeah, you're pretty honest about that in your book.
Well, you have to be. I mean, it was the truth. And so I think for my husband, he pretty didn't care why I changed, but I think he was pretty happy I did.
Oh, that's good. So when we work with women in the work that we do, so many times, we say, well, you need to do this or this, or they decide that these are things they need to do, and they aren't sure that they want to do them or not. And what they really would like, and we have to be honest, sometimes it's me too, would like that magic pill. So that it's like somebody could just wave a wand and everything would be different. But it doesn't happen that way. And in your book, you write this great analogy. And what you say is, if you have trouble running a marathon, you cannot change the length of the race, but you can still improve your experience. So tell me how you do the magic pill and that whole marathon analogy with your clients.
Well, for myself, before my trip to Peru and even afterwards, and especially when I'm working with clients early in my career, I wanted that magic pill. I wanted to find that one thing that they could do, that one thing they could take to go, boom, life is perfect. And what I found was, number one, it's not a one-size-fits-all. So what works for me and how I do it doesn't work for all of my clients. And so it's very unique. And then the thing is that life doesn't end. So I could give you a magic pill to help you with an issue that you have with your job right now. We can solve that problem together. But tomorrow you're going to have a different problem. And the day after that, there's going to be a different challenge. And after that, there's going to be a different struggle. And so we're constantly changing, we're constantly moving. And I guess if I have a magic pill, the magic pill is constant awareness and choices and in the moment making each moment different. So the magic pill is being in the moment, being aware in the moment, and actively choosing what you want to experience in that moment.
And that awareness, you say that there's 4 steps to letting go of a type A to getting to type me. And the first one's awareness, and it's awareness, acceptance, alternatives, and actions. And when you talk about the awareness, you say, and I love this in your book, type me habits. And that's another thing. You say that, you learn type A habits, so you can learn type me habits. And you say type me habits are about empowering you to be you. And Melissa, when I'm interviewed for Victorious Woman, I'm often asked a question like, what do you think is the best advice you could give a woman or something along that line? And I always say, be who you really are. And, and it's not just for women, it's for men too. It's like that being who you really are instead of being that other person that sometimes we think we're supposed to be. That being who you really are is really critical. You notice that too, right?
Absolutely, because that's where your happiness is, if nothing else. I think, and I did this, I was guilty of it, I was the good corporate woman, and then I tried to be the good wife and always the good daughter, and I was trying to play all these other roles that either I defined or society defined for me, but they weren't who I was. And the closer and closer and the more I stay to my true, unique self and the way of being that I need to be, the happier I am, the more effective I am, the calmer I am, and the more people like to be around me because they actually see the real me.
So I guess the question I'd like to ask you is that awareness, that inner awareness, how does that look like, for some of your clients, how does that look like in their lives?
Well, we started the conversation earlier today about constant doing. And so if you were like me with the checklists and the tasks, you'd finish one thing and move to the next, and you were kind of a robot. And so when we shift to our awareness, our inner awareness, not reacting to circumstances, not doing what we think we should be doing, not doing what society or convention tells us to do. But when we actually stop and get in the moment and stop comparing ourselves to others, stop judging ourselves by what, supposed experts or peers or society says, and just really get to our inner awareness of who we are, what we prefer, how we operate in the world, and what makes us happy, it is so much then easier to make choices that are going to empower ourselves and make ourselves happy.
And Melissa, you talk about one way of getting there is by living in a state of gray, and we need to go for a commercial. But when we come back, let's talk about the state of gray. So That's where we're going to hear, good listeners, victory checks and you guys when we come back. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour.
Are you one of those women who lived the first part of your life as a really good girl? That is, you did all the right things and followed all the so-called rules for women? I was like that too. But have you noticed that once you passed 40, you have less patience for those rules? Maybe you even think that the rules really don't make sense for you anymore. Maybe they never did and you just didn't realize it. Do you want to go where other recovering good girls meet to inspire each other and support their new empowered selves? Then join me, Annmarie Kelly, and some very fabulous Victorious Women. We're on Facebook at the Victorious Woman Project. So go to facebook.com/Victorious Woman Project. I'll talk to you there.
Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Annmarie Kelly, and I'm here with Melissa Heisler, and we're talking about her book, From Type A to Type Me. And Melissa, we're talking about being in a state of gray. That doesn't sound too appealing to me. So what is that, and why is it important?
That's kind of funny. I think that's the first time I've heard that, but I could see where state of gray doesn't sound very exciting. The concept of state of gray, or why I gave it that title, is that as a type A, I was so much in the world of black and white, either and, right or wrong, past or future, and I couldn't find that middle ground. I couldn't find that space of peace. And so the state of gray is a place of non-judgment. It's being completely in the present instead of being focused on the past or future. And it's really important because it provides us that safe space to get back in touch with ourselves. You know, it's really the foundation of that awareness of our type me.
And you tell your clients that's the place you want them to start. And if my listeners wanted to know how to find their state of gray, how would you tell them to do it?
Well, I would think that a lot of them would immediately think of meditation and yoga, which are great ways to do it. But I'll tell you, when I got started, and a lot of the clients that I work with, you know, there's no way that they're going to sit cross-legged for 20 minutes in quiet because it's too far from them. And I also believe that the state of gray should be integrated into our lives, not just a one-time thing, you know, or once-a-day thing. But when I got started, I could do things like playing solitaire, which was just enough of keeping my brain occupied, but not really having myself thinking or overthinking. I could also do it through walking. You know, I could walk around the neighborhood and not judge my neighbor's landscaping or that they had a bigger house than me, but just focus on the act of walking.
And not have earphones.
Not have earphones, no. You want to turn off as much of the distractions as possible. And really, the idea is to get into the exact moment you're in, because that's the only moment we can affect. That's the awareness that we want to get to. Because when we're in that inner awareness, when we're in that state of gray, we're more calm and less reacting, because we're going to be in the moment, knowing our truth and acting from our truth, not reacting to what's happening outside of us.
So, Melissa, when people do those, I was talking in the break to my producer Fred about corn mazes, and corn maze isn't exactly what I was thinking about, but you know where you walk in a circle, or and I can't remember.
The labyrinth.
Yes, thank you.
Labyrinth?
That's right. That would be sort of like a state of gray thing, wouldn't it?
It would absolutely be a state of gray thing, because it's you go in there, and the idea is to focus on your breath and focus on the path, and to let go of your constant monkey chatter thinking, and just truly be in the moment and be aware of everything that your senses are bringing to you, the smells and the sounds and the crunch of the leaves under your feet if you're outside doing the labyrinth, and just be as much as possible in that very moment.
And so I was thinking as you were saying that, some of the things that I used to do that I haven't done for a long time, I do them when I go on vacation, but I don't do them in like my regular life, but I think I should start doing them again. Needlepoint and embroidery, things like those kinds of craft projects that you do, and that's the only sound you hear.
Yes, it's a very meditative state, doing creative works like that. And I think you've hit on the problem for so many people, is they'll go on a vacation or go on a retreat, and they'll be calm for 5 days, and it's the most blissful experience they've had, and then they get back to their life, and they're doing the same hectic things they were doing before.
Well, that's because it takes 4 weeks to catch up.
That is true. That is true. But another solution is to actually integrate state of gray into your life. So it's not just about going and locking yourself into a room and meditating for 20 minutes. It's how can you be in the state of gray when you're washing dishes, when you're meeting with people, when you're dealing with traffic. Can you approach your normal tasks through the day and really be in an utter state of presence while you're doing it?
It just made me think that sometimes when if I'm writing and I get stuck and I'm working from home, I'll go into my kitchen and I'll bake something. Even if it's just a box cake. Just that, it's like that kind of a thing, that just being in that present moment, and I'm not thinking about anything else but making sure the eggs go in and the oil goes in and whatever else happens with that. So that's a really interesting state of gray type of thing. I have to pay more attention to it.
Absolutely. What you're doing with making your cake is you're also disengaging from the problem.
Right.
So you're saying, take a rest mind, I'm going to go do something else, and then you allow that creative part of your brain, your intuitive part of your brain, to do its work. We can't force intuition to work. It just kind of comes on its own time.
It's true.
So when we're trying to write something or do something, we're being really, really intense. I always think of a closed fist. We're trying to force something to happen, squeeze it to make it happen. And if we actually want to receive the answer, we need to open our hands. We need to relax. We need to be in the moment. We need to be receiving and not tense and not overthinking things. And so doing that disconnect really helps.
And that goes to your next step, which is acceptance. And in that step, you talk about releasing the baggage. And, Melissa, I think if we could all lose about 15 pounds if we lost the baggage.
I think we would definitely lose a lot of mental and physical weight if we got rid of some of that baggage.
Well, let me ask you this. You write in your book, every memory we hold of when we were wronged by others, victim of circumstances, shamed by our own actions, that's kind of the baggage. So how do you let that go?
By identifying it, that it exists. So usually it's a belief or a thought or something you're replaying, and know that you don't have to get to where it came from. So if you have that belief of I'm less than and you keep playing that in your mind and it's holding you back, you don't need to know if it's because something happened with your dad or your swim coach or whatever it was. You don't need to know why it's there. You just need to first identify that it exists and that you don't want it. And once you identify it and say, I don't want to own this anymore, there's a couple different tools you can do. One is to give yourself 3 examples of why that belief is not true. So either examples in your own life, people you know, whatever it is, give yourself proof that that belief is not true. Another way to go about it is the reverse and say, what's the reverse of that belief? So if I'm not worthy is the belief, then the opposite would be I am worthy. And give yourself 3 examples or 3 times where it's true that you are worthy. And that can break that emotional tie we have to that thought or belief, because now we have proof, and proof takes over any kind of memory that's stored with us.
And sometimes I think writing that down, and because we all have audio on our phones, just that memory and keeping it in your phone. If you don't like to write, that's a really good way of doing it, but making sure you keep a record of that.
Yes, identifying, and then I think what you're getting to is writing your new story. Mm-hmm. So when you're trying to get a new belief over, to release the old one, it's like any habit that you're building. And so it takes at least 30 days for it to become routine, and then 60 days for it to kind of stick. Mm-hmm. So if you have your list of new beliefs that you want, either written or audio, that you repeat to yourself daily, you're starting to create a new track in your mind, a new belief, and you're creating that groove in your record of your mind to get it to stick.
Melissa, we have run out of time, and I have so many other questions that I think my listeners would like the answers to. So, good listeners, you're just going to have to buy the book. How can they get the book, Melissa?
Well, they can go to From Type A to Type Me. They can, while they're there, they can actually download the first chapter if they like. And then there's a link to Amazon. It's available as an ebook and a hard copy.
And I put a link to that, and they can download that first chapter. If they go to the radio wrap-up at victoriouswoman.com for today, then that link is right there. Melissa, thanks so much for coming to Happy Hour with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been delightful talking to you.
Thank you. Same here. And you Victory Chicks and you guys, we're wrapping up another happy hour together, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, let me know. I love hearing from you. And you can do that on Facebook at Victorious Woman Project, and you can also you go to that radio wrap-up at victoriouswoman.com and leave a comment on the radio wrap-up. I hope you're doing something inside because we're going to have a wet weekend. I hope you're not going to an outdoor wedding or anything. Here's a good quote for you for the week, and it comes from Melody Beatty, who said, Letting go helps us to live in a more peaceful state of mind and helps restore our balance. It allows others to be responsible for themselves and for us to take our hands off situations that do not belong to us. Good one, eh? Thanks so much for coming to Happy Hour with me today. Please come back next Friday, and if you can't get me online, you can get me on your phone through tunein.com, or you can just go to the WCHE website. Have a victorious weekend. Chen's on.
Thanks for listening to this Friday Happy Hour. Make sure you subscribe, rate and review today's show. And join us again next week for the Friday Happy Hour with Annmarie Kelly.